Paul A. Nash.
How do you spell that?
Paul. Initial A for, well, Nash.
Perfect. And how old are you?
92 and a half.
How long have you lived in Shannon County?
Well, I was born and raised in 1928 in the Due East area. That's out that off an F highway out here back east. And I went to school in a 2-room schoolhouse out there for about 2 years. And then in about a couple of years, they bused us into Eminence High School. And, well, we lived, our house was right below the schoolhouse. And the only really in remembrance is my mom and my dad, Harley Nash and Marie Nash. I started school about when I was 5 years old, and Mom, she walked me to school, and it probably half, 3/4 of a mile from the school, and we had a swinging bridge, about 10 steps up on each side of the creek, with a swinging bridge, and well, one incident, we were having a revival in the schoolhouse out there. And of course, I was only about 4, 5, 6 years old then. And I can remember that coming home from church one night, somebody strung a piece of wire at the lower step on the bridge. And Mom, we had there's a brother. He's younger than me. He's probably maybe 1 or 2 years old. And we're crossing that bridge, and when at the lower end, my mom got her foot hung up in that wire, and with the baby, and we run out. She ran out there, made a circle, and came back and just sat down right in the middle of that creek. Just half down and half up all the time. I think, and the possibility, pretty sure that I can remember Dad just letting them have it. Of course, they were hid. They didn't want to even make a peep. But we all knew, Dad and Mom, they knew who probably did it. But anyway, we lived on a Freeman Hughes's farm. And Freeman Hughes, of course, and his family, the only one of the boys that's left now is Andy Hughes. And he's a neighbor of mine right now. But anyway, we made it fine out there, and after Mom took me one time, I walked back and forth myself. And like I say, we lived on Freeman Hughes's place there, and we were living in the place, and then Dad and Mom, they built a house out on the F highway. And I do remember one thing that they did. They, when they got the house part way done, we moved from that house over to the one they were building, and with a horse and a sled. There was big snow on it. And, well, from that point on, Dad didn't have the house rocked at the time. Just had this tar paper around it, Well, some of the part in time, some of the tar paper was loose on the house, and about the only thing we was doing is walking back and forth to the creek, and we just anything to be playing, you know. Didn't have no money. We was poor as Job's turkey, and and we would, them waspers build nests in that tar paper, you know, and we'd get out there and stir them up with a stick.
Now, do you think, how do you live your life now?
Huh?
How do you live your life now? Do you think it's a lot easier than back then when you were having to help keep the house up?
Well, not with me, because Mom, she did all the housekeeping. It was easier on us kids, you know, that back then, and we didn't know that we were poor. Everybody was in the kind of the same pickle. And so later on, I started cutting logs for the Albert Bressler, and that's the father of the Bessler brothers here in town, and they're still living. I cut logs with a cross-cut saw, and with Brom Burnett, which he's another one who's working with me. And I didn't even hear of a chainsaw back then, down in this area. And I got that finger cut off in, not off, I wish they just took it off, but we had a couple of doctors, Dr. Udi and Dr. Hyde here in town. And I think I was about 12 years old when I started cutting timber, me and Brom, and with a crosscut saw. And we'd haul logs and work in the mill, anything could go by, and well, the Lord was good to me. And I'll tell you though, my experience with the Lord, of course my dad and mom went to church all the time, and that was one thing back there was church, because back there we didn't even know what a TV was. We had an old radio, and it took a dry cell battery to keep it up. We didn't have money to buy a battery a lot of times. And then in 1946, our pastor was, our church was needing a pastor, and the Assemblies of God in Springfield, they asked the pastor out of Lebanon, which is, his name was, well, initial E.E. Hembry, H-E-M-B-R-E-E. And they had 4 children, and the headquarters called them. They were on their way to moving to California, but the Assemblies, they called him, want to know if, he said, Eminence is needing a church and it's open. Would you be interested in coming down? And they said, well, I guess we would. So they did. They came down, and the finishing, they got it 100%.
What about you and your family? Like, what is your family?
My family was on a little farm.
I just meant, like, did you, like, marry and have kids, or? Yeah,
and that's what I was getting into. When they moved, the Hembry family moved down from Lebanon, they had the oldest girl, this was in about 1946, and her name was Edna, and then she had 2 brothers, Leroy and Robert, and another sister, Lois. And well, we went to going together, Edna and I did, about 1946. And that's time I was still working at the Bressler mill, and Well, then we did, and the Lord worked it out, and we got married April the 19th, 1947, Edna and Paul. And about 48, we moved from Eminence to Joplin, Missouri. And I was working with a car transport company. And when we got married, I said, I don't want no kids, because I ain't nothing but a kid myself at 18. She is 19. And so in 1950, at Joplin, I was a trucking company. I got a drafting notice. So I was registered down here at the courthouse, and at Eminence, and I'm pretty proud of Eminence. And it's a lively little town. The courthouse, county seat, and just everything. No, you don't have to go someplace to get your license. We can come down and get our car license and anything like that down here. So I'm proud of Eminence. And but then when I went into service in 1950, and I came out in 1953. And in the meantime, we had our first child named Melita Ann Nash. She had it in the Naval Hospital in Oceanside, California. And I think it was right before I got out of the service, which about only 3 or 4 days.
How many kids did you end up having? How many kids did you have altogether?
We had three children, Gary Wayne, a boy, and Melita Ann, and Karen Elaine.
And when did y'all move back to
And
here?
we got out of service in 1953, came back, of course, to Joplin, and then bought a house that was fairly new. And in 1955, at the time when I got out of service, I went back to working for the trucking company I left. And so in 55, unbeknownst to none of us, they said, well, we built a terminal in St. Louis, and we want everybody to go with us and go with us. So we just had the house. So her and I, we talked about it, of course, and decided we were going to St. Louis with them. And I rented a house and loaded a car in a little 6-foot trailer.
When did you move back to Shannon County?
Back to Shannon County, 1989.
And why did you move back? What about this area made you want to come back here?
Home. I came back home in Eminence, Missouri.
What is your favorite part about living here?
The friendship, the school, and the county seat being here, and everything is convenient. We don't have to wait in lines at a stop sign for a half an hour. And so within, I'd say 6 months of my retirement in '89, the airport authority in St. Louis, we were in a subdivision right at the southwest corner of the Lambert Airport. And so naturally they bought the whole subdivision, and I got, I'd say, a lot better from the St. Louis authority than I would putting it on market. And so my brother called one night and he said, well, there's a house up here, and I knew where it was at and how long they'd been building on it. So he said it's going to be available. And so I said, well, it's not going to cost much to run down there and look at it. And so we drove down that night, on the Friday night, or not that night, the next day, we moved down. And so the airport authorities paid for the moving, and they came in, packed everything, loaded, and moved us down here. And I think I had to pay $200 difference in mileage, all I had to pay. And well, my daughter Melita, our first child, she had a sugar problem, and we'd already been living down here for some time, but she passed away when she was 56 years old. So we lost the first child, and but the Lord was good to us at times. We got as much out of that house up there that, with the exception of about $1,000, we bought the place down here, difference I had to get paid. And so everything is, in my life and looking back, everything that amounted to much was a blessing for me with my wife and my family. And it seemed like opportunities just come really well. On our way from out of the service in Oceanside, California, we had this little 6-foot trailer, and I had a 41 Chrysler. And when I went to, well, when we had to come back, and we had to go to St. Louis for physical, of course, and then it was right on Christmas, and they let us go from St. Louis, go home for 2 days, and we had to be back up there for 2 days. And we rode a train from St. Louis to Los Angeles, California, and took my basic in San Diego, California. And it's just, the place we got now is a blessed place. We never thought in our lifetime that we'd ever have one like that. And only I got much out of the house place in St. Louis that this place cost. So I've got 3 farms, or 2 farms, and the baker, he's my neighbor, and I've got his farm. And I got cattle on all of it. And yeah, like I say, I give Lord credit for making everything really easy. After you go for years, you know, you can just look back. And driving that 41 Chrysler came back. We got within a quarter of a mile, Dad and Mom's house, and burned a wheelbarrow bearing out on that there little trailer. And I said, you can see how the Lord's work. I got within a quarter of a mile of my Dad's, Mom's place, and they'll burn a wheelbarrow. And coming from California to Eminence, that could have happened out in the desert with a little baby and a 41 Chrysler. But it's really been kind of a miracle with me, and I was going to say that now that wife and I, she passed away in, my wife passed away in Oh, 11. She had a stroke, Edna. And I've got 30 in our family now. And when it comes Sunday morning, after we're all here for Christmas, all together, when it comes Sunday morning, and I didn't beg one of them, they had 30 in Sunday school. When they come down like a gathering at Christmas, all of them, they'll be in church with me. And I don't say a word about it. I don't beg or nothing, they just know that's where they're supposed to be.
What's the hardest thing about living here?
You know, I don't know what would be the hardest. I'm in pretty good health. I haven't had my shots yet, but I'm going to, the Lord's will. And but living here, I got so many friends that it's, well, I try to bring somebody with me from church every Sunday morning to eat. And that's the hardest thing, being without my wife. She is the grandest thing that the Lord ever put in my life was her. She was a wonderful wife and a wonderful mother. And life was just, I've had, it isn't here, but it's the things that's happened here, the struggle like losing her, and I live with myself. And I've had, you know, a few girlfriends, but that ain't nothing compared to her.
Do you think that people that live in the Ozarks are special?
Oh, yes.
What makes them so?
And I think what is so special about Eminence, it is so crowded down here when travelers or vacationers, got Jack's Fork River, got Kurt River, got Alley Springs, Blue Springs, Big Springs, all state parks. And this is just a wonderful, and there's people that's buying land. And in fact, my son, he went to work for, back then was McDonnell Aircraft. No, it wasn't. Who was it? Ozarks. It was. And then, let's see, he works for Boeing now, but and he's already age of retirement at 62, and he's went to work there right out of high school. Didn't go to college, no nothing. He's still working for him, and make good money. And then they have just bought a new home down here, and probably the most expensive one in town. And then he's got about 90 acres with it, and I got all the land I got cattle on it. But well, the Lord's just been good, and I got so many friends. They ask me, you know, they want to, even this place here, they pamper me like crazy.
Have you seen the area change since you've been here?
The area has got larger, got more people. Population is pretty good now, and it's easy to live here because everything is pretty much convenient. And we're only 120 miles from Springfield, about 150 to St. Louis, you know, and Of course, West Plains are only 65 miles from here. And I could still be feeding my cattle in the wintertime, taking care of them, but it'd be rough, because I've got 4 tractors, but I don't have a cab on one of them. And so I've got a fella feeding. My nephew fed last year, but then another boy, he took over this year feeding for me. Because the other fella, my nephew, he had a job with propane deal. And but something, I wish we could think of something that would be hard to live in.
Well, my next question is, where do you think Shannon County is going to be in another 40 years? Where do you see it?
Do what?
Where do you see Shannon County in another 40 years? Like 40 years from today?
40 years from today, if we don't have some kind of catastrophe, well, I think it'll be bigger. I think the population will be bigger, but you know, there's been so much property bought. They have to go out quite a ways to get property now, probably. But right now, they could find some. But my son, with this house he got, had 30 acres with it. And then he's bought about 30 or 40 more acres that joined him. He's already built up that. And yes, I can see it get larger, because when joining towns on a Saturday, you go where you can't find hardly nobody on it if you're looking for it. It is kind of dead like. You come over here, you can't hardly get up and down the street. When they're all summer, we have trail rides here for the horse people and floating, and several floating companies with the boats and this and that. And we managed to hang on to we had 2 restaurants here. That little one closed up just here the other day. This one here, these 2 sisters has got this. And the one, I don't know where I ought to put it in there, but the one that don't have it, but there's a sister that does have it. And the one that don't have it, she walked out the other day and she told me, I'm going home, and I ain't coming back. Well, I walked in today and she's back, and her son's a cook. So, yeah, they all, and well, it's just plain. I don't know that there's anything really hard. I've had some hard jobs and never had an inside job in all my life. I've always worked outside, and my kids, they're good on their money. They handle their money really good, and then we're going to come down and live close to me. That'll be a big blessing for me. We get together, and I've got 2 brothers and a sister lives here, and then I got a brother in Carthage, Missouri.
Now, back to when you were talking about Shannon County getting bigger, do you think you would like that, or do you not like that?
Well, that's another thing. There is so many that gripes about getting to town and getting in the restaurant or doing whatever they want to do, and they complain about it. I said, can you see, without these that's coming in here, what Shannon County be like some of these other little towns around here? But we're blessed with all these springs, and 2 great big, well, 3. There's the Blue Springs, Alley Springs, Round Springs, and you take all of that. So I think this is a blessed town, and we got our pastor. He's moved here about 5 years ago, him and his wife Patty, and he's a good musician, and he was a custodian right after he moved here. He was a custodian of school. Now he's retired, but the school hired him on to be the music teacher. And our church has got a nice parsonage for the pastor, and we're just really blessed. And I'm not just boasting about Eminence, but I am proud of Eminence. Because I was born and raised here, and married here, and any place I go, right here, wouldn't have to pay a penny if I and they let me. They don't tell how long they'd let me ride if I had the credit. But I tried to keep my finances pretty much together, and I'm just out of town about a mile out of city limits, going toward Ellington, to 106 up here.
Oh yeah.
And it's got green pipe fence in the front of it with a big tractor wheel. My mailbox painted yellow, and the fence is green and yellow.
Well, Paul, we'll have to visit you someday. Thank you so
Oh,
much for doing
I would love to just take you up. I'm available. If you had the time, I'd take you all up there.
Well, now that we have your